Ever wonder who or what is really like crafting the news you read and watch? Get ready, because we're going deep into how AI is kind of changing the game in journalism from like those busy newsrooms to your own news feed.
It's so wild how this tech is like reshaping how news is both made and like taken in.
Mm.
And we've got these really insightful articles from the International Journalists Network and the Thomson Reuters Foundation to help us sort of explore all of this.
Yeah, we're on this mission to like equip you with a solid understanding of how this whole AI thing is like this revolution, exploring how journalists are actually using it, the good and the bad, and like what it all means for the future of news.
Yeah, it's a complicated world, but getting it is like super crucial for anyone who wants to be like a smart and informed, news consumer these days.
So let's like start by setting the scene.
Yeah.
The World Press Trends Outlook,
Yeah.
it paints this picture of an industry that's totally changing. Print is going down as digital goes up, but not enough to like make up for the losses.
Yeah, it's a huge financial pressure, and it's pushing publishers to get really creative. The report talks about all these experiments with memberships, like even doing events and stuff, even getting into e-commerce.
Wow.
It's like they're searching for this like new recipe to survive, and AI is like this potential ingredient.
Huh. So speaking of AI, the Thomson Reuters Foundation report,
Yep.
it says that, get this, over 80% of journalists in the Global South are already using AI tools.
81.7%.
Wow.
It makes you wonder what kind of impact this is having on these regions, right? Like, are there unique challenges or opportunities there because of this fast adoption?
For sure. And the report even breaks down what they're using AI for.
Yeah.
Mainly it's stuff like drafting and editing, transcribing, fact-checking research.
Exactly.
But here's the thing. That same report, it says only 13% of newsrooms around the world have like actual AI policies.
It's this weird contrast between like wide use but limited guidance. We call it the AI adoption paradox.
That's an interesting term. Can you sort of unpack that for us? What does this paradox actually mean for journalists and the industry as a whole?
Basically, it means journalists are like jumping into AI tools often by teaching themselves, but they don't have formal training or like ethical frameworks to guide them. This raises all these red flags about misuse, unintended consequences, the need for like standards and practices.
So it's like they're diving headfirst into these new tools, but a lot of them are doing it without a roadmap or a safety net.
Right.
And the report even names some specific tools like ChatGPT, Grammarly, Otter, Canva. Are these like made for journalists, or are they adapting tools from other fields?
A lot of them, like Grammarly and Canva, they were for like everyone at first, but journalists found really useful ways to use them. For example, Grammarly, it uses AI to make your writing better, and that can help journalists write super polished and error-free articles.
Right. Right. That makes total sense. It seems like journalists are finding all these innovative ways to use existing tools to just streamline their work.
Yeah.
And what about ChatGPT? It's like everywhere these days. How are journalists using that?
Well, ChatGPT is an AI chatbot. You can use it for things like coming up with story ideas, summarizing really long reports, even writing first drafts of articles.
Wow.
But it's important to remember that tools like ChatGPT, they still need a human journalist to check everything and edit to make sure it's accurate and to avoid bias.
So it sounds like there's this big emphasis on humans and AI working together. It's not about replacing journalists, but making them work better and smarter. The report even quotes a journalist from Ghana who says, AI has made my journalism so much better. It's helped me research faster and analyze complicated data quickly and accurately, especially in things like HIV research and environmental reporting.
That quote is like the perfect example of AI giving journalists the power to tackle tough issues and do work that really matters. By automating some tasks, AI frees up journalists to focus on in-depth reporting, critical analysis, and building relationships with their sources.
It's like they can finally breathe and focus on the human stuff, right?
Right.
But even with those positive examples, the report also talks about this real sense of unease among journalists. There's worry about potential problems and unintended consequences. It's almost like this double-edged sword.
It is. It's like AI has all this incredible potential, but it also has these challenges. Journalists are grappling with things like AI may be spreading misinformation and biases, eroding core journalistic skills, even leading to job losses. These are valid concerns that need to be addressed carefully.
Totally. And the report has this quote from a newsroom manager in the UAE. They say, clear ethical frameworks and regulatory guidelines for AI in newsrooms are so important to keep things transparent and keep the audience's trust, especially when it comes to AI-generated content. So establishing trust and transparency, that's like the key thing in this new AI world, right?
Transparency is huge. If newsrooms aren't upfront about how they're using AI, it can really damage the public's trust in the information they're giving.
Audiences have a right to know how the content they're reading or watching is being made and edited.
So it's not just about journalists using AI the right way. It's about them being open with their audiences about how they're using it. It's about like acknowledging the elephant in the room.
Exactly. And that openness is so important for building a good relationship between news organizations and their audiences. We need to move past this like black box idea of AI and create a system that's more open and accountable.
So let's dig into some of these concerns. One of the biggest ones is AI may be making misinformation and bias worse. Almost half of the journalists surveyed said they were worried about this. And they have every right to be worried. AI models are trained on massive amounts of data, and that data can have biases. If we don't deal with those biases, AI tools can accidentally make them worse. And that leads to reporting that's skewed or just plain wrong.
And the report even shares a quote from a journalist in Uganda who warns against letting AI take over critical thinking. They say AI should help humans, not replace them. It's a good reminder that human judgment and analysis are still super important even in this AI-driven world.
Absolutely. We can't let AI become a crutch that stops us from thinking critically for ourselves. Journalists have to stay vigilant about evaluating information, checking sources, and questioning assumptions, even when they're using AI tools.
It's like AI can help you with the heavy lifting, but you still need to be the brains of the operation.
Exactly.
Another big worry is that core journalistic skills will disappear. The fear is that relying too much on AI could lead to less investigative reporting, less source development, maybe even hurt the art of storytelling.
It's a valid concern. Imagine if journalists got so used to AI-generated content that they forgot how to do in-depth interviews or tell compelling stories or uncover hidden truths. That would be a massive loss for journalism and for society as a whole.
And we can't forget about the very real fears of people losing their jobs. The report quotes a journalist from Kenya who's afraid AI could put most journalists out of work because AI will take over their tasks.
That fear is real in a lot of industries that are facing automation. While AI can definitely automate some things, it's important to remember that journalism isn't just about churning out content. It's about human connection, empathy, understanding.
Right, and that human element is something AI, at least for now, just can't replicate. It makes you wonder if AI will actually create new jobs and opportunities in journalism, even as it takes over some tasks. It's something we need to think more about as this technology keeps changing.
It's a question worth exploring. Maybe AI will lead to new kinds of journalism jobs focusing on things like AI ethics, data verification, AI-assisted storytelling.
The possibilities are kind of endless when you think about it.
Right.
The report also mentions the fear that AI will lead to more generic content and will lose unique voices in news reporting. It quotes an editor in Saudi Arabia who worries that if everyone uses the same AI tools the same way, everything will start to sound the same.
It's like the difference between a handmade piece of art and something mass-produced. We need to make sure AI helps journalists express their own styles and views, not make them all sound like robots.
That's a great way to put it. It's about using AI to boost creativity and different ways of thinking, not to create a world of robotic news reports. It seems like the big challenge is finding that sweet spot between using the power of AI and keeping the human heart of journalism.
Absolutely. And it's a challenge that will need constant discussion, collaboration, and a willingness to adapt. But before we jump into potential solutions and the way forward, let's switch gears and see how news audiences are reacting to all this AI in journalism. The article from the International Journalists Network has some really interesting insights on this.
Yeah, let's get into that. Yeah. It's one thing for journalists to be dealing with all this, but it's just as important to know how the people reading and watching the news feel about AI shaping the information they get.
You're right. Public perception is a huge factor in how AI will be used in journalism. If people aren't comfortable with it, it could hold back its adoption and damage trust in the media.
So what does the article say about how audiences are reacting? Are they welcoming AI in journalism or pushing back against it?
Well, the article has some interesting findings. It says that people are generally okay with AI doing behind-the-scenes stuff like analyzing data or suggesting content, but they're not so sure about AI actually creating or editing content.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
There's a certain level of trust involved in knowing that a human journalist is ultimately responsible for the information.
Right. And that's why transparency is so important. If news organizations are open about how they're using AI, it helps build trust with their audience.
But the article also says that only about 25% of news audiences think they've actually encountered AI in journalism, with about half unsure or thinking they might have.
Yeah.
That suggests a big gap between how much AI is being used and whether the public even knows about it.
That lack of awareness is a little worrying. It can lead to mistrust and skepticism, especially if people feel like they're being kept in the dark about how AI is affecting the news they're consuming.
The article really emphasizes that who or what creates your news is important because it can affect the quality, the fairness, even the accuracy of what you're reading or watching. It's a reminder that we as news consumers need to be more careful and critical of the information we come across.
It's about becoming more media literate in the age of AI. We need to learn how to critically evaluate information, spot potential bias, and understand how technology shapes the news we get.
And that's where transparency from news organizations becomes even more important. The more they're willing to share about their AI use, the more informed we can be as news consumers. It's about creating a partnership where everyone's informed.
Exactly, and this partnership is key for dealing with the ethical and practical challenges of AI in journalism.
So let's dive deeper into some of the specific ways AI is being used in journalism, both behind the scenes and in more visible roles. The article gives some really good examples that show how diverse this technology is.
AI is being used for all sorts of things, from transcribing interviews to writing headlines to even making images and videos. It's a tool with many sides that's quickly changing how journalism works.
It's like a Swiss Army knife for the modern journalist.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And as with any tool, it all comes down to how you use it. And that's where the ethical questions come in. While some ways of using AI might seem fine, others make you wonder about accuracy bias, even the possibility of manipulation.
The article has some good examples of how even simple tasks can have consequences they didn't mean to happen. It talks about how AI can be used to pick the best images from an event. But what if AI defines best differently than a human would? What if it focuses on sensationalism over accuracy or misses little but important details that a human photographer would catch?
That's a great point. AI algorithms learn from data, and that data can have biases or prioritize certain things over others. We have to be aware of these potential pitfalls and make sure AI is used in a way that lines up with what journalism stands for.
And then there's the even scarier possibility of AI just making stuff up.
Yeah.
The article mentions how AI can create images that look totally real but show things that never happened, or generate videos that are completely fake, in a time when misinformation is already everywhere. That's a really scary thought.
It shows us how powerful AI is, but also how much responsibility comes with that power. We need strong safeguards to stop AI from being used to create and spread lies.
And it's not just about making things up completely. The article also talks about cases where AI has been used to plagiarize content or send out news alerts that were just plain wrong. Remember that time Apple had to stop its automated news feature because it falsely said a murder suspect killed himself? That's a wake-up call that even big companies can mess up when they use AI.
It shows that we still need humans to double check and make sure things are true, even when we're using AI tools that are supposed to do things automatically. We can't just trust AI to get it right every time.
So while AI has all this potential to make journalism better, it also has some serious challenges that need to be dealt with thoughtfully and ethically.
It's a complicated world, but it's one we need to explore and understand. By knowing the potential problems and talking openly about them, we can use AI to make journalism stronger, not weaker.
I think that's a great point to transition into our next segment, where we'll dig into potential solutions, ethical guidelines, and the way forward for AI in journalism. But first, let's take a quick break to gather our thoughts and come back ready to tackle these important issues.
Sounds good. I'm looking forward to exploring these things more and talking about how we can create a future where AI helps journalists and benefits everyone. It feels like we're at this point where the choices we make about AI in journalism right now are really going to shape the future of news.
Yeah, totally. We've looked at the good stuff and the worries about AI. So now how do we move forward? How do we do this whole AI thing the right way?
Both reports have some good ideas. One thing that keeps coming up is the need for clear ethical guidelines for the whole industry. It makes sense considering how fast everyone's adopting AI and how it could be misused.
It's like putting up guardrails. So AI is used in a way that matches up with what journalism is all about,
Yeah.
Accuracy, fairness, accountability.
Exactly. And these guidelines can't just be some theory, they have to work in the real world. They should cover actual situations journalists face and give them clear directions on how to use AI responsibly, what not to do, and what could happen if they cross those lines.
And it can't be like a one-size-fits-all thing. These guidelines have to work for all newsrooms, no matter how big or small they are, how much money they have, or what kind of journalism they do.
You got it. We don't want only the big, rich organizations being able to use AI responsibly. Everyone needs to have access and support.
The Thomson Reuters Foundation report also talks about needing transparency policies. It seems like transparency is super important in all this AI stuff. Why is that?
Transparency is key for building and keeping the public's trust. News organizations need to be open about how they're using AI. What tools are they using? What are they doing to prevent misuse or bias? What are the limits of these tools?
I remember that article from the International Journalists Network had a simple suggestion for us news consumers. It said, if you're not sure if or how journalists are using AI, look for a policy or something that explains it from the news outlet.
That's a great idea. We have the right to know how AI is being used to shape the information we get. And if a news outlet doesn't have a clear AI policy, we should ask for one. We need to hold news organizations accountable if we want them to use AI responsibly.
So it's not just journalists figuring this out on their own.
Huh?
It's about talking to the public and being open to feedback and even criticism.
Exactly. It's about working together and realizing we're all in this together. Another big recommendation from both reports is that we need more government and industry regulations.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
AI in journalism brings up all these complicated legal and ethical questions that our current laws might not cover. We need to figure out how to protect against AI-generated misinformation and make sure AI doesn't create unfair competition in the news industry.
Those are good points. And it's not just about preventing bad things. Regulations can also encourage people to innovate responsibly and make things fair for everyone involved in news.
The reports also say it's important to invest in training and skills development for journalists. What kind of training do journalists need to be ready for this AI-driven future?
They need to really understand how AI works, what it can and can't do, and the ethical stuff that comes with using it. That includes things like knowing how to spot bias in AI algorithms or how to use AI in a way that helps them do their job better instead of replacing them completely.
There's a quote from a journalist in Russia who says, we need to talk more about the ethical issues with AI in journalism. They're worried that publications are so focused on getting attention and traffic that they're forgetting about journalistic standards in this rush to use AI.
I see their point. We need to make sure all this excitement about AI doesn't make us throw away ethics just to get clicks and likes.
It's about making sure AI makes journalism better, not worse. The reports also say it's important to make sure AI helps all newsrooms, not just the big ones.
That's about fairness. Smaller newsrooms that don't have a lot of money or tech skills often can't afford to use AI well. We need to find ways to support them, whether it's through money, open source AI tools, or mentorship programs.
We want everyone to benefit from the AI revolution in journalism, right? We don't want to make the gap bigger between those who have resources and those who don't. The goal should be to help journalists from all backgrounds and places tell their stories using the best tools out there.
That's it. Everyone benefits from a diverse and lively news scene. It's not just about technology, it's about giving people a voice and making sure those voices are heard.
And at the end of the day, it's about realizing that AI is a tool and we can use it to make journalism stronger, not tear it down. We need to go into this new world with curiosity, responsibility, and a commitment to cupping the things that make journalism so important to a working democracy.
I'm with you. As we go forward, we got to remember that the goal isn't to replace journalists with AI. It's to give them the power to do what they do, best inform the public, hold the powerful accountable, and tell stories that matter.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into AI in journalism, let's turn to you, our listener. What are your takeaways? What are you hoping for, and what are you worried about when it comes to AI shaping the news we get?
We've covered a lot, but there's still so much more to explore. The world of AI is always changing, and it's important to stay informed and involved.
Remember, you have a part to play in this. Support news organizations that are using AI the right way and call out those that aren't. And most importantly, stay curious, ask questions, and be a part of the conversation about how AI is changing everything.
It's like we're all writing the next chapter in the story of journalism together, and it's happening right now, right in front of us.
And that story isn't just being written by journalists and tech people. It's being written by all of us who read, watch, and listen to the news.
Exactly. Which is why we need to pay attention to all the details, the different views, the possible problems, and the promises. We have to be a part of this evolution of how we get and share information.
Going back to the Global South, it's amazing how journalists there are using AI, even though they don't have a lot of resources or support. It really shows how AI can make information available to everyone and give journalists all over the world more power.
The Thomson Reuters Foundation report does a great job showing that. It talks about how journalists in the Global South are using AI for everything from investigating corruption to reporting on climate change to covering health crises.
And they're doing all this often with tiny budgets, not much training, and sometimes even when their freedom to report is threatened. It's a powerful reminder of how tough and creative journalists are, especially in tough situations.
And it shows why we need to invest more in training mentorship and giving journalists in the Global South equal access to AI tools. We need to make sure everyone benefits from AI and that it's used to lift up different voices and views, not silence them.
It's about making things fair and making sure this AI revolution in journalism doesn't make existing inequalities worse.
Mm.
We've talked a lot about the practical side of AI in journalism, the tools, the policies, the rules, but there's a bigger, deeper question here, isn't there?
You mean the question of what it means to be human when AI is getting so smart?
Exactly. As AI keeps getting better and starts to create content that seems like a human made it, we have to ask ourselves, what is journalism really about? What do human journalists bring that AI, at least for now, can't copy?
That's a really deep question. It gets to the heart of why journalism is so important to a society that works. Is it about creativity, critical thinking, empathy, the ability to connect with people and build trust? Maybe it's all of those things and more.
And as we figure all this out, we need to make sure that AI makes the human side of journalism stronger, not weaker. Because at the end of the day, it's that human element that makes journalism so important for an informed public and a strong democracy.
So, as you go out there with all this new knowledge about AI and journalism, we encourage you to keep asking these questions, keep pushing for transparency,
Mm.
and keep supporting the journalists who are working hard to bring you the news with all its complications and its irreplaceable value.
And on that note, we'll leave you with one last question to think about. Will we get to a point where AI can write entire news articles that are just as good as something a human wrote? And if that happens, what ethical and philosophical questions will we have to face as news consumers?
It's something to think about as we move into this uncharted territory.
It definitely is. And even though we don't have all the answers, having these conversations and dealing with these tough issues is key for building a future where AI and journalism can both exist and succeed.
It's pretty mind-blowing to think about how AI could change not just how news is made, but also how we actually take it all in. Right? Like imagine getting your news feed and it's totally personalized just for you with information that matches your interests, your background, even like how you learn best.
That sounds so cool, but also a little creepy. Could AI help us deal with information overload? You know, like
Yeah.
filtering out all the junk and just giving us the best and most reliable stuff?
It could definitely happen. AI could be like our guide through this massive ocean of information, picking out content from tons of different sources and pointing out anything that might be misinformation or biased. But that also brings up the problem of filter bubbles and echo chambers, where we only see things that agree with what we already believe.
Yeah, that's a good point. We don't want AI to make us more narrow-minded. We want it to help us see the bigger picture. Maybe AI could actually push us a little outside our comfort zones and introduce us to ideas that are different from ours and make us think twice about what we think we know.
It's a tough balance, but it's worth trying. AI could be like this helpful friend that recommends stuff that helps us understand complicated things, even if it challenges what we thought we knew.
And speaking of challenges, we can't forget about how AI could be used in bad ways when it comes to news and information. We've already seen those deep fakes and all that fake news spreading around.
It's a reminder that AI is just a tool, and like any tool, it can be used for good or bad. It's up to us, both the people making the news and the people reading or watching it, to use AI ethically and carefully.
It's like we need a new kind of media literacy,
Huh.
where we're really good at spotting biases, checking where information comes from, and understanding how technology affects the news we get. Those skills are going to be so important as things online get more and more complicated.
For sure. We have to be smarter about how we consume information.
And that brings us back to how important education, transparency, and open conversations are. We need to give both journalists and the people who read their work the knowledge and tools to navigate this AI world in a responsible way.
It's a journey we're all taking together, and the choices we make now will decide what happens to news and how it shapes our society.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into AI and journalism, we want to leave you feeling empowered, not just worried. The future of news is happening now, and we all have a say in what it looks like.
Stay informed, stay curious, and stay involved. Support the news organizations that are using AI the right way and demand better from those that aren't. Challenge what you see, ask tough questions, and be a part of this conversation about how AI is changing the world.
And remember, even though AI can make journalism better, it can never replace the human heart and mind that make journalism so important.
It's that human part of it, that passion for finding the truth, and that dedication to holding the powerful accountable. That's what will make sure journalism stays strong, even in the age of AI.
That's all for this deep dive into AI in journalism. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep shaping the future of news.